The bullet cracked the night like a whip across the desert's back, and Elias Kane dropped from his saddle before the echo died. He rolled behind a slab of sandstone, heart hammering against his ribs, Colt already in his fist. 20 yards away, the Apache scout he'd been tracking for 3 days crouched low, bow drawn, eyes catching starlight like polished obsidian. Elias had hunted men before, Comancheros, rustlers, deserters, but this one was different. This one had left no trail, only silence. Until tonight. He thumbed the hammer. One squeeze and the hunt ended. The bounty on the scout's head, dead or alive, would buy him a spread in the Chiricahua foothills, a place to forget the war, the graves, the blood on his own hands. His finger whitened on the trigger. A child's cry cut the dark. From the shadows behind the scout stumbled a girl no older than 10, barefoot, clutching a rag doll stitched from saddle leather. She tripped, fell, and the scout's bow wavered. Elias saw the tremor in the warrior's arm, the way the man's gaze flicked from the child to the rifle barrel now trained on his heart. The scout could loose the arrow, maybe take Elias with him. Instead, he lowered the bow and raised both hands, empty. Elias's breath fogged in the cold. He had orders, bring in the renegade who'd burned the stage station at Doubtful Canyon. The girl complicated things. Children always did. Step away from her, Elias called, voice rough as saddle soap. The scout didn't move. The girl scrambled to him, burying her face in his buckskin shirt. Elias saw the raw burn on the man's forearm, same pattern as the charred timbers at the station. Guilt by fire. Last chance, Elias warned. The scout spoke then, English clipped but clear. She is sick. Fever. Needs medicine you carry. Elias's saddlebags held laudanum, quinine, a surgeon's kit left over from the war. He could ride away, leave them to the desert. One bullet, one less problem. The girl coughed, a wet, rattling sound that scraped Elias's conscience raw. He lowered the Colt. Put the bow down slow. The scout obeyed. The girl clung tighter. Elias approached, boots crunching on frost-rimed gravel, every instinct screaming ambush. Up close, the scout was younger than he'd figured, 25, maybe. A scar ran from hairline to jaw, pale against copper skin. His eyes held no plea, only calculation. Name, Elias demanded. Taza. Elias Kane. You burned the station. Taza's mouth twitched. Soldiers burned my village first. I burned their mail. The girl whimpered. Elias knelt, pressed the back of his hand to her forehead. Skin like a branding iron. How long? 3 sons. Elias cursed under his breath. He could dose her, ride on, collect his bounty tomorrow. Instead he unslung his canteen, dug out the quinine. Hold her. Taza hesitated, then cradled the child while Elias measured powder into a tin cup. The girl drank, gagging, but swallowed. Elias tore a strip from his own shirt, soaked it in whiskey, bound the scout's burned arm. Taza watched every move, silent. Why? Taza asked when Elias cinched the knot. Reckon I'm tired of graves. Dawn bled across the mesa as Elias built a small fire. He boiled coffee, shared jerky. The girl, Liana, Taza called her, slept fitfully against the scout's side. Elias studied the man who'd eluded him for days. Taza's moccasins were worn through, his quiver nearly empty. Renegade or refugee? The line blurred. You turn yourself in, Elias said, they'll hang you. They will hang me either way. Not if I say different. Taza's eyes narrowed. You would lie for me. I'd tell the truth. Station was empty. No one died. You took horses, left the strongbox. That's theft, not murder. Taza considered. And the girl? She comes with me. Gets doctoring in Tombstone. Taza's hand drifted to the knife at his belt. Elias tensed, but the Apache only cut a strip of jerky for Liana when she stirred. She is my sister's child. Last of my blood. Elias felt the weight of that. He'd lost a sister to smallpox, a brother to a Yankee minniball. Blood was blood. They rode double, Taza behind Elias, Liana cradled in the scout's arms, heading for the San Simon Valley. Elias expected betrayal at every mile, but Taza kept his word, hands visible, bow unstrung. They camped in arroyos, shared water, spoke little. Elias learned Taza had been a scout for Crook, turned renegade when the army broke promises. Taza learned Elias had mustered out after Appomattox with nothing but a discharge paper and a ghost in his eyes. On the fourth night, Liana's fever broke. She laughed at the stars, called Taza uncle in Spanish. Elias watched them, something loosening in his chest. He thought of the bounty circular crumpled in his pocket. $500. A fortune. A betrayal. At dawn they reached the outskirts of Tombstone. Elias reined in at a crossroads, one trail to the sheriff, one to Mexico. He dismounted, faced Taza. Decision's yours. Taza looked at the town, then at Liana asleep against his chest. You would let me go? I'd forget your face. Taza studied him a long moment. Then I forget yours. He slid from the horse, set Liana gently on the saddle. Take her to the mission. Sisters will care for her. Elias's throat tightened. You're leaving her. She will live. I will not. Taza pressed something into Elias's hand, a small carved horse, mesquite wood, worn smooth. For luck. Before Elias could speak, Taza melted into the mesquite. Gone. Elias rode into Tombstone alone, delivered Liana to the nuns, told them her uncle had died of fever. He burned the bounty circular in the mission stove. That night he drank mezcal until the room spun, trying to drown the carved horse staring at him from the table. Weeks passed. Elias took jobs, guarding payrolls, tracking strays. The carved horse rode in his pocket like a splinter. He avoided the sheriff, avoided mirrors. Then came the telegram, Apache raid on the Dragoon Spring stage. 3 dead. Witnesses described a scar-faced warrior. Elias saddled up, rage and guilt warring in his gut. He'd let a killer walk. He tracked the raiders into the whetstones, found their camp at dusk. 6 warriors, painted for war. Taza wasn't among them. Instead, tied to a juniper, was a white woman, hands bound, dress torn, eyes fierce. Elias ghosted closer. The woman was arguing in Spanish, voice steady. The raiders laughed. One raised a lance. Elias shot him through the throat. The camp erupted. Elias dropped 2 more before they scattered. He cut the woman loose. She stared at him, breathing hard. You're late, cowboy. Recognition hit like a slap. The woman from the stage station, Clara O'Donnell, schoolteacher, sole survivor of Doubtful Canyon. The one Taza had spared. You, she whispered. Ma'am. Elias tipped his hat, suddenly awkward. You hurt? Only my pride. She rubbed her wrists. They took the children. Elias's blood iced. What children? Orphan train. 6 of them. Headed for Tucson. Her voice cracked. The warriors said they'd trade them for guns. Elias saw Taza's face in his mind, the way he'd cradled Liana. I know where they'll cross the border. They rode hard, Elias, Clara, and a posse of miners who'd lost kin to the raid. Night fell black as ink. Elias tracked by instinct, by the memory of Taza's moccasin prints. They found the renegades at a dry wash, children huddled in a circle, warriors arguing over a crate of rifles. Elias signaled. The posse opened fire. Chaos. Gun smoke, screams, the stench of powder. Elias fought his way to the children. The sun hung like a copper coin above the Dragoon Mountains when Elias Kane rode into the yard of the old Lopez hacienda, dust swirling from his horse's hooves. 20 years had passed since the night in the dry wash, 20 years since Taza vanished into legend. Elias was 50 now, shoulders stooped from breaking broncs and breaking hearts, but his eyes still held the same restless blue. The carved mesquite horse rode in his vest pocket, smooth as river stone. Clara waited on the veranda, apron dusted with flour, gray braid swinging as she waved. "You're late, old man." Horse threw a shoe. Elias dismounted stiffly, tied the gelding to the rail. "Biscuits? And chokecherry jam." She kissed his cheek, tasting of sun and cinnamon. "Liana's coming with the children." Elias grunted approval. Liana, now a midwife with 3 boys of her own, still called him Tio Elias though no blood tied them. The mission had raised her, Clara had taught her letters, Elias had taught her to ride. Some families were built, not born. Inside, the hacienda smelled of pine and coffee. Elias hung his hat, ran calloused fingers over the mantel where the carved horse stood sentinel. Clara watched him. "You still think of him," she said. "Not a question. Every damn day." Elias poured coffee, steam curling like ghosts. "Heard talk in town. Prospectors swear they saw a scar-faced Apache near the border, trading herbs for bullets." Clara's eyes softened. "Let the dead rest, Elias. He ain't dead till I see the body." The door burst open. Liana swept in, arms full of wildflowers, her sons tumbling after like puppies. "T.O. Mama says you wrestled a mountain lion." "Exaggeration," Elias grumbled, but he let the youngest climb his leg. The boy's hands were sticky with jam already. Supper was loud, stories, laughter, the clink of tin cups. Elias watched Liana's middle boy, Diego, carve a stick with a pocketknife, tongue between teeth in concentration. Something in the set of the child's shoulders reminded him of Taza teaching Liana to notch arrows by firelight. The past wasn't buried, it walked beside them. After the boys slept, Elias and Clara sat on the porch. Stars crowded the sky like spilled salt. Crickets sang. Elias turned the mesquite horse in his fingers. "I aim to ride south tomorrow," he said. Clara didn't argue. She'd learned long ago some ghosts only quieted when you faced them. "Take water. And the rifle." Dawn found Elias saddled and provisioned, Clara pressing a parcel of biscuits into his hand. "Bring him home if he'll come. Or bring yourself home. Either way." He kissed her forehead, tasted flour and worry. 3 weeks. The trail wound through saguaro forests, across dry lakes crusted white. Elias followed rumors, herders who traded with a scar-faced curandero, miners healed of fever by bitter tea. At a Yaqui village he bartered coffee for information, the medicine man camped in the Sierra del Tigre, alone but for ravens. On the 7th day, Elias smelled wood smoke. He crested a ridge and looked down on a jackal hut, ramada of ocotillo ribs, a thin curl of smoke rising. A man sat outside, grinding herbs in a metate, movements slow and deliberate. The scar caught sunlight like a blade. Elias's heart stuttered. He dismounted, walked down the slope, boots silent on pine needles. The man looked up. Same eyes, older, crow-footed, but unmistakable. "Taza." The Apache set aside the grinding stone. "You took long enough, cowboy." Elias stopped an arm's length away. 20 years of questions crowded his tongue. "You let me think you were dead. Dead men don't owe debts." Taza's voice was gravel and smoke. "You came to collect. Came to give you this." Elias pulled the mesquite horse from his pocket, held it out. Taza took it, turned it in scarred fingers. "Still carries my luck. Carried mine too." Elias swallowed. Liana's grown. 3 boys. Clara's hair went silver waiting for me to stop running. Taza's mouth curved, not quite a smile. You found your circle. Part of it. Elias gestured at the hut. This your circle now? Taza shrugged. I heal. I teach. The young ones forget the old wars. He studied Elias. You look tired. Reckon I am. They shared coffee boiled over mesquite coals, spoke of small things, rainfall, horse breeds, the price of quinine. The sun slid west. Taza rose, fetched something from the jackal. A bundle wrapped in trade cloth. For the woman who waited, he said, pressing it into Elias's hands. Inside, a shawl woven of indigo and crimson, patterns of horses running. Clara's colors. She'll cry, Elias warned. Good tears are medicine. Night fell. They sat by the fire, flames painting their faces. Elias spoke of the children saved, the school Clara built, the way Liana's laugh could stop a stampede. Taza listened, added wood, said little. When the moon rose full and white, he spoke. I burned the station to draw the soldiers away from the village. Too late. They came anyway. His voice was flat, matter of fact. I thought vengeance would fill the hole. It only widened. Elias poked the fire. I hunted you to fill my own hole. Found a bigger one. Silence stretched, comfortable as old boots. An owl called. Taza stood. Come. He led Elias to a clearing ringed by pines. In the center stood a circle of stones, inside it a small cairn. On top rested a child's moccasin, tiny, beaded. My sisters, Taza said. The fever took her after you left Liana at the mission. I buried her here. The circle keeps her close. Elias's throat ached. I'm sorry. Grief is a river. You learn to swim or drown. Taza placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. You swam. They stood until the fire burned to embers. Elias felt the years slough off like old bark. When he spoke, his voice cracked. Come home with me, Taza. Clara's got room. Liana's boys need a grandfather who carves horses. Taza was quiet so long Elias thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my place is here. The young ones need stories of the old ways before they vanish. Elias nodded, understanding in his bones. Some circles couldn't be joined late. Dawn painted the mountains rose and gold. Elias saddled up. Taza walked him to the ridge. Tell the woman her shawl will warm her dreams, Taza said. Tell the boys their grandfather rides with the wind. Elias swung aboard. You could tell them yourself. Taza smiled, the scar pulling tight. Some stories are better heard secondhand. Elias reached down. They clasped forearms, warrior to warrior. You were wrong that night in the desert, Elias said. I wasn't your man then. But I am now. Taza's eyes shone. And I was yours. Go. Elias rode north, the shawl tied to his saddle, the mesquite horse back in his pocket where it belonged. The trail unspooled like a story he finally understood. Behind him, smoke rose thin and straight from the jackal, a promise kept. 3 weeks later he crested the hill above the hacienda. Clara waited on the veranda, shawl around her shoulders though the day was warm. Liana's boys raced to meet him, shouting questions. Elias dismounted, swept the youngest into his arms. Clara touched the shawl. He's alive. Alive and stubborn. Elias pulled her close. But he sent you this. That night they hung the shawl above the mantle beside the carved horse. Liana's boys listened wide-eyed as Elias told the story, not of bounties or raids, but of 2 men who chose children over vengeance, who built circles wider than blood. Years later, when Elias's hands shook too much to carve, Diego, now tall and quiet, took up the knife. He carved horses for his own children, each one carrying a tiny scar across the cheek. The circle widened.